Welcome back to another episode of The Farming Chefs. In today's episode we'll be making 3 different dishes with smoky aubergines, and we're gonna prove together that we can do this without setting our kitchens on fire. Let's go! The variety we're cooking with today is called Black Beauty, and of course it's very clear why it's called that. These beauties are very black and very beautiful. Look at the shine of these ladies. The reason I wanted to share these recipes with you simultaneously is because we will be enhancing them with a smoky flavor and cooking them at the same time, meaning that you could actually prepare these 3 recipes simultaneously in a lot less time, since we'll be cooking all of them together right here behind me on the stove. So all my fires are on now and it's getting nice and toasty behind me. So what we'll do next is we'll just make sure that we have a few clean aubergines. So you can wash them beforehand, but make sure they're nice and dry. And then we'll pop them straight onto the flames. Cooking them on this open fire really enhances that smoky flavor, as the skin of the aubergine will actually burn, providing that smoky flavor. You can tell that they're ready when they're very squishy. And all their skin has to be burnt evenly, so you need to twist them around accordingly. Alright, these are all the way cooked through. We're gonna set these aside until they cool down enough so we can handle them again. And in the meantime, we're going to start prepping dish number 1, which is a hot and spicy tomato dip. Let's get cooking. Get out some garlic. We're going to go with 3 cloves of garlic and we're going to roughly chop them up. Then just pop them to the side for a second. This dish is going to be made on the stove and then left to cool down to serve with some fresh bread. The next thing we'll chop is a fresh onion. Could also be a dried onion, but I'll be using the green stems for the next dish. So I'm just going to cut off the green bits. Just pop that to the side for a second. Now I'm going to just slice 1/2 centimeter strips. Alright, that's ingredient number 2. Then we'll be using 1 green pepper. I just stack these up as a little cake now, and then I'll be slicing them lengthways in order to get an even dice out of them. And I'll be chopping them roughly the same size as the onion. I've got the garlic ready, got the onion ready, and I've got this green pepper ready. And then if you want to add a little bit of heat, you could add 1 chili in here. But if you're not really into spicy food, then you could just leave this ingredient out. The finer you dice this, the spicier it will be, because if you break up the seeds, you're releasing a lot of that spiciness. So you could also de-seed them if you wanted to make this only mildly spicy. These ingredients are all ready. Let's saute them on the stove. We're going to add a generous amount of olive oil. The first ingredient we'll be putting in is the onion. This has to be cooked on a relatively high heat, and once the edges start getting golden, you add in the garlic. And then a quick second is your green pepper. And last but not least, the chili. I'm going to pop down the heat and then I'm going to start preparing my cherry tomatoes. These are extremely sweet, that's why we're using these. I'm going to add, these are quite big, so I want to say 8 of them. And throw them in there. Into that I'll be adding 1 teaspoon of cumin and 1/2 teaspoon of smoked paprika. Just toss that around. The next ingredient I'll be adding is a little bit of salt. Now I want my tomatoes to get nice and soft, but I don't want them completely disintegrated. And then I'm going to deglaze with some balsamic vinegar. Okay, this is now done and I'm going to leave it in the pan, but I'm going to pop it to the back to just cool down a little, and we're going to move on to recipe number 2. So for recipe number 2, we're going to chop up a lot of raw ingredients and mix that in with the aubergine at the end. And we're going to start off again with some garlic. I'm going to choose 2 cloves, but smaller ones this time, as this garlic is going to be consumed raw and can be quite spicy. All of these dishes that I'm making today are inspired by different things I've eaten abroad, but most of them have been consumed by me in the Middle East. They do these wonderful things called mezes, which basically are tables full of spreads and all kinds of deliciousness. Now, get yourself a nice mixing bowl. I have 2 bowls here. My advice is always, if you can go bigger, it's better. Mixing in too small a bowl, well, there's nothing worse really. So I'm going to use this bowl now and I'm going to put this garlic in here. Now for this recipe, I'm also going to be using a green pepper, but this time we're not going to cook it. So it's key importance that you dice it very finely. I would say that we're trying to go for a millimeter dice on everything here. So this is a great recipe to practice your knife skills. Compost heap, getting fed on the daily. I'm going to slice out these white bits. They're a little bit bitter, so try to always remove those. As you can tell, I'm going quite fine here. All right, now you've got these matchstick sized, basically like this. Crunch them all together. Just let your knife do the work for you. Tiny little dice. I'm gonna transfer that into the bowl as well. Next ingredient, I'm going to be finely slicing the stalk of the onion. So spring onion is also good here. I'll just be making some incisions along the length of the stalk, I think you would say, stalk. Is it stalk, Philippe?
Stem.
Stem? Stalk? No, it's not a stem, it's a leaf, you know, but it's an onion leaf. Again, fine dice. Practice those knife skills. It's all in the arm. Practice makes perfect, so don't get deterred. You're also able to make this dish if your knife skills are atrocious. I won't judge you. The next player in this game is cucumber. I'm not going to be putting a whole cucumber in there, that's way too much. I'm going to go for about 1/3 of it. I'm going to quickly peel it and then de-seed it and do the fine dice over again. Look at those little bits of cuke, aren't they cute? Once I get into finely chopping things, I get very excited and then I just want to chop everything very finely. So that's what this dip is all about. Chop it fine. This dish, because it's going to be served cold, needs to be quite acidic to give it a bit of a punch. So I'm going to slice up a lemon and I'm just going to squeeze the juice in there already. There we go. This is how I train my muscles. See? See how big they are? Philippe?
I just see a tendon that moves.
Now again, I'm really into spicy dips, so we're going to be adding a bit of green chili in here. But if you don't want that, you obviously don't need to put it there. This is a frozen chili and that's why it looks a little bit sad, so don't judge it. The new ones are on their way. The next thing I'm going to add is a dash of yogurt. So this yogurt is just full fat yogurt and it's just going to add a little bit of roundness to the dish. 1, 2, 3. So this is the base done for the second dish. I'll be adding the seasoning and the aubergine in at the very end when we'll be finishing all of them together. So let's move on to the third recipe. For the third recipe, we're going to be making an egg mixture, and for that we're going to need 4 eggs, again some garlic, some parsley and some green onions, heavy salt and heavy pepper. So let's go and get that done. Chop up 2 cloves of garlic. I'm going to move that into the bowl. And then I'm going to be doing the same thing I did to the stalk of onion before, except that I'm going to use a few more of them. I'm going to add about 4 stalks. That's 5, I believe. Just go with it. Let's go with the flow. 5 stalks. These bits go in the compost. I really want the green bits. And I'm also going to get rid of the end bits, since that's just going to be slightly difficult to get them nice and squared. Again, I'm making cuts lengthways so that it will just be easier to achieve that dice at the end of it. into the bowl. Now the next green element is a little bit of parsley. Now what I tend to do is I just bushel it all up into a little tight little package. Then I'll be cracking 4 of these eggs in here. I'm gonna go for 1 heaped teaspoon of salt in here. That's quite a lot, but it's gonna have to season the aubergine so we can get away with this. And I'm going to also be adding a little bit of coarse black pepper. And whisk, whisk we go. So this mixture is done. I'm gonna pop that to the back and then we're gonna undress these black beauties. All right, so these are completely cooled down and now you can handle them just with your hands. Okay, so now let's finish recipe number 1. Into this big glass bowl, we are now going to add our tomato mixture. Scrape all that goodness off the bottom. I'm going to roughly chop that up. I'm going to introduce that into the bowl. I'm going to do the same to a second aubergine. And then we're going to rip up a bit of basil to go into the dip. We're going to give that a good stir. Mind you, it's going to be the stirring that is going to break up this aubergine and make this whole mixture into the right consistency. If I were to blitz this, the whole thing would just become too liquid and a bit boring to eat really, because it would just be too much of the same thing. Now the last ingredient I'm going to be adding into this, besides maybe a bit of extra salt because I'll taste it in a second, are these black olives. Now let's give it a quick taste. It has a really good heat to it. It's very spicy, but I like it that way. However, if you don't like spicy, definitely take out the chili, as this is quite spicy. Another recommendation would be to add some of the juice of your olives if you made your own olives. That fermented juice is very salty and has a depth of flavor that would add to this dish. If you are using store-bought olives though, I maybe wouldn't recommend that, as it's just salty water really. Okay, this is delicious as is. I'm not gonna change a thing. If you're making this at home, you can now cling film this and even pop it in the fridge. You can save this up to a week in the fridge. This keeps very well. I would let it sit for a few hours before serving it. That would be optimal, but if you're in a hurry, serve it straight away. There's nothing to be embarrassed about here. Moving on to bowl number 2. Now, this is looking a little bit nyaka because this has all the lemon juice floating around in the bottom of it. But when we add the aubergine, this is also going to be tasty. So, I'm going to add 2 pieces of aubergine once more. I'm going to switch to wooden spoon because you really have to beat this a little. Okay, now I'm going to season it, and I'm going to be doing that with a generous amount of salt, half a teaspoon, some black pepper, a generous amount of olive oil, 2 things are very important with this dip. Firstly is that you beat in the olive oil quite rigorously, and that is because you need to bind it to the lemon juice, and that way you'll get a creamier texture. And secondly, refrigerate it before serving, because this is quite an acidic dip, and if it's not served cold, there's something less pleasant about it. It's not in its optimal state. Let's do a taste test. Needs a little bit more salt. And go for another half a teaspoon. I'm gonna add a tiny bit more olive oil. Got myself a fork. Time to move on to the 3rd recipe. This is exciting because it looks really fun when it's done. Egg mix. And then I'm going to be taking my 2 smallest aubergines, and here's where the fun begins. Because what I'm going to do now is, with my fork, I'm going to be squashing the aubergine flat, but I'm going to make sure that it doesn't release from the head of the aubergine. You're making squash skirt. You're making a tiny dancer. Now I'm gonna place some sunflower oil in our pan and get it hot, and then we're going to fry them off. Now you're going to take your aubergine skirt, place it in the egg, baste it. This would go great with all kinds of bread, naan, pita for instance. I have some homemade buns here that I'm about to toast. And then it's serving time. Toasted breads are done. Now let's plate up these dips. And that was it, guys. Smoky aubergine 3 ways. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you want to find the full recipes, they're on our website. I'll leave the link below. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up if you find value in our channel. It is very much appreciated. See you on the next one, The Farming Chefs. Peace out.